Hello, and welcome to California Gun Law. I'm your host, Don Hammond. Today I'm going to discuss California's safe handgun roster, the features that make a semi-automatic handgun safe under California law, and the legality of bypassing or removing those features. And I've got prompts. I'm a licensed California attorney and a shooting instructor. I regularly help teach the 16-hour class that's required to get a concealed carry license in California. On this program, we provide education on California's complicated web of gun laws so that responsible gun owners like you can better understand how to lawfully exercise their rights. California has a complicated web of firearms laws and regulations, and there are lots of traps for the unwary. We want to help you do it right so that you won't need our criminal defense legal services. Today, I'm going to discuss a bit about the roster, but mostly California's safe handgun requirements that apply to semi-automatic handguns and the legality of disabling or removing those features, plus a little bit of a litigation update. Penal Code Section 31910 contains various requirements for handguns to be sold in the primary market in California. That is, to be sold in new condition by an FFL, that's a firearms licensed retailer, in California. Since 2006 and 2007, the requirements have included a loaded chamber indicator and a magazine disconnect safety. In 2013, the state added a requirement that the firearm microstamp every expended round with a unique identifier, a technology that actually doesn't commercially exist. So this requirement is still on hold during some pending litigation that I'll address in just a minute. Another required feature that was added later is an external manual safety. None of these features are required for a handgun to be sold in the secondary market, for example, in a private party sale. And law enforcement are exempt from the requirement. They're allowed to carry unsafe handguns every day. To be added to California's safe handgun roster, a pistol has to have these features, plus pass a drop safety testing. The manufacturer is required to submit 3 sample guns to the California Department of Justice for testing and pay an annual fee to DOJ for the pleasure of maintaining the gun on the roster. Some guns are still grandfathered into the roster without some of these listed features. Let's take a look at each of these features and what they mean. A loaded chamber indicator is defined in Penal Code Section 16380. It's a device that indicates when there's a cartridge in the chamber of the pistol. This is meant to prevent accidental discharges from people not realizing that there was a round in the chamber. This is the P365 that I carry most of the time. You can see a loaded chamber indicator here. And on a Smith & Wesson Shield, here it is up top. And on a SIG P229, there it is up top also, with the wording attached to it. As you can see, the loaded chamber indicator can take a variety of forms, but in all of its iterations, it shows someone that the chamber is loaded without having to manipulate the slide. I kind of like this feature, as I can see or feel that there's a round in the chamber without having to rack the slide. However, I use it for confirmation that the chamber is loaded. I would never trust it as confirmation that the chamber is not loaded. Only a visual check will make me feel comfortable that the gun is unloaded. A magazine disconnect is a mechanism defined in Penal Code Section 16900. It prevents the gun from firing unless there's a fully seated magazine in the magazine well. This feature is designed to address a similar issue as the loaded chamber indicator. It's supposed to prevent accidental discharges because people think that the gun is unloaded just because there's no magazine in the gun. You can see on this stock shield that even though the slide is racked, it should fire, nothing will happen, the trigger will not work because there's no magazine in there. If I insert the magazine, the trigger works. Most gun owners do not like this feature, and it seems like a bad idea in a self-defense situation. If there's a round in the chamber, I'd like to be able to use it to save my life regardless if the magazine is fully seated or if it's completely fallen out of the gun in whatever scuffle was going on. Microstamping would put a unique identifier onto each round fired from a particular gun so that authorities could identify which gun the round came from without fancy ballistics work. The technology doesn't actually exist on a commercial level, and no manufacturer makes a gun that would comply, and the requirement is not currently in effect. External safeties, of course, are available on a variety of popular models, but many manufacturers make models without them, instead using internal safety mechanisms to prevent unintentional discharges. This is the least offensive of the California requirements, but it still prevents California residents from accessing the latest and greatest of modern handguns. So back on March 20th of 2023, a federal district court issued a preliminary injunction prohibiting the state of California from enforcing Penal Code Section 31910, subsection B, subsections 4 through 6. At the time, these contained the loaded chamber indicator, magazine disconnect, and microstamping requirements. The law has since been amended and the provisions have been moved around, so it's a bit confusing to find the requirements in the Penal Code. The case is Boland v. Bonta. Of course, that district court ruling was immediately appealed to the Ninth Circuit, where the case has been on hold behind the recent Duncan decision. The district court's preliminary injunction was stayed with respect to loaded chamber indicators and magazine disconnect mechanisms. So those are still currently required on new semi-automatic handguns sold in California. Enforcement of the microstamping requirement remains stayed, of course, because the technology doesn't actually exist on the commercial level. Recently, the Ninth Circuit ordered supplemental briefing in this case in light of the recent Duncan decision, and both parties submitted their supplemental briefs a few months ago. The Boland v. Bonta case is now awaiting decision from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. In the meantime, new guns sold in California are still required to have a loaded chamber indicator and a magazine disconnect, plus an external safety that you can see Smith & Wesson added over here on the shield that did not originally have one in their design. But what if you remove them after you take the gun home? Well, there's no law against that. In fact, aftermarket parts and YouTube videos explaining how to remove these features are readily available. In some cases, popular modifications are impossible without removing the California features. For example, to put a Wilson Combat grip on my P365, I had to remove the magazine disconnect. As you can see, without a magazine, I can still pull the trigger. Also, I ordered this second slide here with a red dot mounted on it, and it came without a loaded chamber indicator. So I ordered this second slide with a red dot mounted on it because I'd rather switch slides than deal with repeatedly mounting and unmounting an optic. And this new slide did not come with a loaded chamber indicator. It's still perfectly legal for me to put this new slide on my P365 and carry it. Now, there are some counties that will not allow a modified gun on a CCW license, but that's a whole nother topic and a possible future video. I've updated the news section on cagun.law to keep a running update on hot topics, and I'll be adding more, so check that out to stay up to date. And while you're there, feel free to buy a t-shirt or a coffee mug to support the cause. I'm Don Hammond at California Gun Law. Stay informed, stay legal, stay safe.